Yo, Chuck.
Hey, what's up YouTube? In this video, we're going to go over two-sum, which is a common whiteboard interview problem. It involves finding a sum from two numbers in an array. So I'm going to show you three different methods to accomplish this algorithm. The first two are naive solutions, and the third is optimal. It is as fast as you can possibly do this algorithm, to my knowledge. So stay tuned. This should be a good video. So for the first solution to two-sum, I'm just going to make a function called two-sum. It's going to take an array as a parameter, and then it's also going to take a target. Let's return the array for now. I'm going to console log this out. Let's pass in a sorted array. Just for educational purposes, you don't need to have a sorted array to do this. I'm going to just put this in because it'll be easier to understand. And then a target value, let's say of 8. Okay, let's run this code in our terminal real fast. And it returns the array. Perfect. Okay, so the strategy for this first naive solution is to initially just loop through the array. So I'm going to make a for loop. Set I equal to 0 as long as I is less than array.length, increment I. So what we can do is take a value at array index I and then add it to all the other values that are not at array index I. So we can make an inner for loop designated with the j index. So if I set j equal to 1 plus I at the start of each for loop, we can just add these two numbers. And then if they don't equal the target, we can move on to the next number. So now j would be where at index 2, so array at j plus array at I would be 1 plus 3. Does that equal our target of 8? No, it doesn't. So we'd increment j again. And then we'd say, does 1 plus 4 equal our target of 8? No, it doesn't. So we increment j again. And then finally here, we get to the end and 1 plus 5 does not equal 8 either. So what we can do is now increment I. So now I is going to be equal to 2. We're going to start, or sorry, array at index I is equal to 2. And array at index j is just going to be 3. So does 2 plus 3 equal 8? No. So we would increment j. Notice how in this strategy, we're starting with an initial number and then we're just comparing it against every remaining number. Okay? So that's basically all we have to do conceptually. So if I make another inner for loop and I set the initial value of j to I plus 1, as long as j is less than array.length, increment j. I can make a variable called sum and set it to array at I plus array at j. Now let us log out the sum as well as the values of array at j and array at I. So I want to show you what's happening here. You can see we have these numbers, our array at index I, and then our array at index j, and you can see how I is staying the same, and the sum is right here, right? Until eventually we want to actually hit 3 and 5. So we want to return these two numbers right here. So we want to return the 3 and the 5. So I'm going to make an if conditional and say if sum equals that target of 8, then I want to return those two values. So I want to return array at I and array at j. Let's console out this, or let's comment out, I should say. And then now if I run the code, I get 3 and 5. Excellent. What if I do, let's do 7. 2 and 5. What if I do 4? 1 and 3. Let's have a check if I look for a number that doesn't exist or a sum that doesn't exist with these numbers. So I could just return -1. So let's look for a number that doesn't exist, like 99. It returns -1. Excellent. Okay. So this is the first naive solution. This is pretty common. Some variation of this you'll see people do on a two-sum problem. Let me show you another way of pretty much doing the same thing but with a different spin on it. This is my buddy Garrett. He made this method of solving two-sum. I think it's pretty slick. So same logic. I'm going to delete this for loop though. So I delete that inner for loop. Save this. Okay. So we're going to scan through the numbers and we want to find the specific number. So how could we do that? Well, what we're going to do is make a variable called num to find, and we're going to set it equal to the target minus the current value we're on. Okay? So this will tell us what number we need to find because we're taking the target, subtracting the current number we're on every time. Okay? So now we know what number we need to find. So in the case of 8, for instance, num to find initially would be 8 minus array at I. I starts at 1, so we'd be looking for a 7. We would never find a 7, so we'd keep going. Then we'd be at like 8 minus 2 equals 6. Do we have a 6 in this array? No. So then we keep going. So that's kind of the logic there. So I'm not going to do another for loop, but I'm going to loop through the data again using a built-in method called includes. So I'm going to say if array includes num to find, return that current number we're on as well as num to find. So let's see what happens when we do this. I get 3 and 5. Sweet. Let's do a different number. 6. I get 1 and 5. So that's looking good. Let's make sure we put that return -1 in case we don't actually find the sum. So if I did, some crazy number like 96, I get -1. Let's do another number like 10. Wait, how'd that happen? We have 2 5s, but we don't have 2 5s in our data set. That's impossible. This should return -1, right? And so the reason what's happening here is we're looking for 5, right? And then it's scanning through the numbers because our num to find is target, which is 10, minus our current number, which eventually becomes 5. And 10 minus 5 is 5. So it's basically finding itself. It's scanning through our array and finding itself. And it's saying, hey, I found 2 of us. That's not what we want to do because there are no 2 5s. So what we need to do in our if statement is make another check. If array index of, and then pass in num to find, and make sure that doesn't equal whatever the current index we're on is. This will prevent those duplicates, okay? So if I run this code, now you can see I'm getting -1. Let's do another check. Let's do 5, 1 and 4. Okay, perfect. So I just wanted to show you this little piece because usually it wouldn't matter, but in most cases it wouldn't matter. You might be able to get away with it, but make sure you're not having the same indices trip, or otherwise you could put in a double value like that. Okay, so those are the 2 naive solutions. Now I want to switch gears and show you the most optimized solution to my knowledge of two-sum. So let me just delete all this code. The way this one works is we're going to make an object. I'm just going to call it map. And the strategy behind this one is we're going to store that num to find value as a property of map, and then look in the array for that num to find property. So what does that look like? First thing I'm going to do is make a for loop. I is equal to 0. As long as I is less than array.length, increment I. Now every iteration of this for loop, I want to take my map object I just created up here, and then I want to set the property of map to target minus the current value I'm looping over. So kind of the same logic as before in the algorithm before. where we have that num to find, which is equal to the target minus the current indices we're on. But this time we're just storing it in a property of the map object. Okay, so inside of here, I'm just going to store the value that we're on, okay? Now I need to check for if the value is undefined, if that property is undefined on the map object. So we'll say if map at the current number we're on does not equal undefined, then I want to return the current number we're on as well as map at array I. Okay? So let's see what happens when I run this code. I get 3 and 2. Okay, that looks good. What if I do 6? I get 3 and 3. Notice we're getting that error again where we're adding duplicates. So the way actually to fix this, we can take this code and instead of checking for our undefined value second, let's check for it initially before this code. So if I do this, now we're checking, hey, is it undefined? Okay, it's not, then push the value into the map as a property. So let's see what happens now. See, now it's working because it's not allowing us to add duplicate values like that. Let's, I should have added this -1 in case the sum does not exist. So let's try a sum that doesn't exist. Perfect. Let's do some more numbers here. 7, 4, and 3. And let's try 4. 3 and 1. Cool. So you could manipulate these numbers. Notice how it's giving me the 3 and the 1. You might actually want to do it like this and just swap these numbers. Oops. You got to swap them actually. Whoops. Okay. There we go. So there you have it, guys. That is Sum. I gave you 3 solutions. I gave you 2 naive ones and the optimized one using an object, which is really slick. I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.